Pricing mistakes that are costing you profit. Here's the truth. If you haven't raised your prices in the last 18 to 24 months, you're almost definitely undercharging. And that gap, it's eating into your profit and fueling your stress. Today, we're going to talk about the biggest pricing mistakes business owners make, why they're so costly, and how to fix them without losing your best clients. I'm Megan Schwan, your accounting sidekick, and this is the Profit Points podcast slash show, your weekly 10-ish minute check-in on the decisions that make or break your profit. Pricing is one of those places, one of those points. It's one of the most emotional decisions in business. CEOs often confuse affordable with valuable. A common belief is if I charge more, I'll scare people away. I won't be able to get clients. But the reality is that underpricing keeps you stuck. It keeps you resentful and it keeps you scrambling for volume. None of those are good things to do. There's definitely a lot of mindset stories that we tell ourselves that surround this aspect of our business. And the only way to improve, change, or grow is by acknowledging that and taking action. That is what I'm hoping we'll be able to accomplish together today. And if this is something that you've overcome, please share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear your journey, as I'm sure would other people. Okay, so let's dig in. So mistake number one is that you never raise your prices. Inflation, cost, growth, all make those unchanging prices unsustainable. Think about the last 12 to 24 months and how much things that you've bought have changed in pricing. Think about how much things have gone up and have gone down and, have whatever gone backwards, right? Sometimes it feels like. So if you haven't addressed any of those things, if you haven't looked at what things are charging you and you haven't changed the pricing, you're already behind. So a quick fix that you can do for this is to review your pricing annually. Put it in your schedule so that you can take a look at what things have changed, how things have changed, because sometimes those things kind of sneak in, right? There'll be things that we're doing, we're serving our clients, we're purchasing, we'll get notices from softwares or things like that their prices are changing. You probably have noticed that maybe it was just something you didn't really think about. And so if you're not really going back to look at that, what the cost that you're spending on things, and you haven't changed your pricing to account for some of those things, you're behind. So mistake number one is not changing your pricing or not reviewing your pricing, not raising your prices. Make sure that you're doing that. Put in your calendar at least annually to take a look. It doesn't mean you have to change your pricing all the time, but you need to make sure you know where your margins are at. Then on that note, mistake number two is that you do pricing based on feelings and not margins. What do I mean by that? Many owners pick a number instead of calculating costs with their desired profit. One example of this is when I started. I've been a business owner for almost 12 years, which is crazy and such a huge blessing. But when I first started, I picked a number out of thin air. And it was, I don't even know where it came. Like, it really was out of thin air. I didn't know what to charge. I didn't know what I was doing. I guess I kind of was like, well, I was $100 for bookkeeping per month. And, since then our prices have gone up, pretty significantly. Our packages now start around $400 for monthly bookkeeping. But at the time I was just like, oh, well, I was making this much money, working this much hours, but there's so much more that comes with that versus just that rate. So I just kind of picked the number. I didn't think about the software costs that I had or my overhead or, anything related to the expenses of my business, because I just kind of fell into business ownership and just kind of was trying to figure it out. So what I've learned since then, and being an accountant, is that you need to check your margins. And what that means is you need to know how much money you have left after you pay for direct labor and materials to producing your product or your service. So you have your sales number minus those expenses. What's left over is your margin. And that margin has to cover almost all of your other overhead, plus typically your pay as well. So you want to make sure that you're always checking your margins and asking yourself, is this offer, is this product truly profitable? A lot of times we recommend people to shoot for around that 40% mark. That's usually a fairly healthy profit, but it depends on the type of business that you have. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at that, comparing things in your industry and talking to somebody who can help you evaluate that. But the point is, check your margins. So make sure you're breaking that down. All right. So then mistake number 3 is discounting to win clients. How many of you have ever done this? Have you ever had a sales conversation and you felt like you were going to maybe lose the sale, so you decided to discount your service or your product? I know I have definitely been guilty of that before. Discounts attract bargain hunters, not loyal clients. And in my experience, if I can just be really transparent and blunt, most of the time, the people that I did this with, that I gave discounts to, ended up being some of the biggest pain in the butt clients that I've ever had, some of the PETA clients. So you want to make sure that you're really understanding that a lot of times discounting to win people is really just getting people that aren't really a good fit for you into your customer base. And that ultimately ends up costing you more than the sale that you're getting. So make sure that you're aware of that. Sometimes it's something that you can offer and it's not bad to discount, but you want to make sure that you're just doing it with a lot of discernment and intention, not just to win a sale, if that makes sense. So it also sometimes erodes your brand and your profitability. So a quick fix to this is that instead of discounts, maybe add value, do bonus calls or extra resources or extended access if they buy. So instead of offering a discount, be like, okay, well, what I can do for you, can't offer you a discount, but what I can do is an extra bonus call or an extra resource, or giving you an additional 2 months instead of, this 12-month service or whatever it might be. That's a better way to do it. It's a more positive, it's a mindset shift. It makes people feel better about buying versus like discounting. You kind of feel bad, they kind of feel bad, kind of a situation, or you end up with those clients that are really just taking advantage of your generosity. So pricing, to recap, let's talk about those 3 mistakes again real quick. Pick 3 mistakes. Never raise prices. You're never raising your prices, pricing without margins, and you're discounting. All 3 of these things quietly drain your profit. So you want to make sure that you're looking out for it. We had another client too, in terms of like the changing pricing thing, because that is such a mindset shift that needs to happen a lot of times. We had a client who was selling a product. He was in a food-based business. And when we started working together, we looked at the margins on everything. And we were like, well, if we're going to meet our goals, we really need to either, cut expenses, bring in more sales, or make things more efficient, right? Those are the only 3 main ways that you can increase your profitability. So we talked about raising prices, and he was really, really nervous about it because, he had a really good customer base, and he was scared that, if he raised his prices, that he would lose customers, which is sometimes the case, but a lot of times the difference in raising prices makes up for it. Not to mention, a lot of times people see value based off of the cost, right? So if you charge more for something, they're going to automatically think it's more valuable. And sometimes that can deter, if you're priced too low, it can deter good clients because they're going to think they're going to get what they pay for. And if you're priced too low, they're going to be like, well, they're going to assume that maybe your product or your service is of lower quality as a result of that. So same thing kind of happened with our client. All we did was raise the pricing like $1. And we did that for like a month. And we saw, he wanted to see like the impact, if he would lose any sales, that kind of thing, because he was real nervous about it, which is fine. And sometimes you can do that where it's like incremental and it's not all right away. But we did that. And he was amazed to find that he didn't lose any customers. He actually made more money because now he was getting more per product that sold. And he ended up being able to do it more confidently the next time. And he actually raised prices a couple more times in the several years that we had worked with him. So a lot of times you just kind of got to do it. I know we did it and with our services, we almost doubled our pricing one year. It was several years ago. I don't do that every year. It was like we hadn't raised prices in like 5 years and it was really low pricing. So anyways, but I did that and I think we lost one client and that was it. And I think a lot of times like people understand the value that they're getting. And so when you raise prices, if they know they've been undercharged because they know what their colleagues are paying, or, they've talked to other places before, a lot of times they're not going to make a shift. They're not going to change, from you. If they're happy with those services, they're going to know that they have that value and they're not going to leave just because you increase your prices because you finally realized your value. We had one client like that specifically where it was like, we really jumped his pricing, but he was just like, hey, like you guys have been undercharging me this whole time. So like, I'm happy to pay that now. Like he got like a discount all those years on accident, right? So don't be scared to raise your pricing, be confident, understand your value, and be able to support that, but don't just not do it because it feels scary or because you're scared about how people are going to react. Okay, so my challenge for you this week is to pick one of your offers, one of your products, run the numbers, check your margin, and decide if it's time for you to raise those prices. And like I said, even with our client that only raised his prices by $1, like that increased his profit margin by like 5%. So like even that small bump can have a big impact on your overall profitability. It's pretty amazing. Pricing is one of the fastest levers to profit, but only if you do it intentionally. You deserve to get paid for the value that you provide, and your pricing reflects that. Okay, so if you want to connect with me more, I do have a Facebook group, youraccountingsidekick.com. I share different tools in there and classes. There's some education in there. And then you can always pop in with questions if you have them as you are building and growing your business. Or you can take my sustainability snapshot assessment. I'll put it in the comments of this video and get 20 minutes of one-on-one time with me. It doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but we can accomplish a lot in that amount of time. It at least gives you some direction. Okay. Thank you so much for watching this Profit Points podcast. I'm Megan Schwan, your accounting sidekick, CEO of Sidekick Accounting. Let's build businesses that actually work for your life, and I'll see you next week. Bye.